Hello my fellow fish fans. Today I have another tag video for you guys, but first I wanted to show you something. Look what came in! Solid gold. I'm so excited. So I have made it a goal to start supporting other YouTubers that I really enjoy because I know just how poorly YouTube pays, and so I'm a patron of a couple of my favorite fish keeping YouTubers, Creative Pet Keeping, Prestige Reef, and Aquarium Co-op, but I also bought a couple t-shirts. I got this one and I got Corey's, and I'm going to get a couple more. So with that note, I wanted to bring up that today's video is brought to you by the Fish Fan t-shirt. It will be linked down below. I started a Teespring campaign. In order for us to actually get all of our shirts, I have to sell enough. So hopefully we'll manage to do it. But if you guys would like to support the channel, support what we're doing, you can do that down below, or you can support us over on Patreon at patreon.com/HeidiKimTV. Anyways, end of self-promotion, but also I'm super excited to be wearing this shirt because I'm going to be talking about some of my fellow fish keepers here since we are doing a tag video. So if you did not see my last tag video, basically, the idea of a tag, because it doesn't seem like they're very popular on the fish keeping side, is that someone makes a video, sometimes it has questions associated with it, and then they tag other people to make the same video. So I did this recently with the My Worst Day in Fish Keeping video, and I talked about the worst day that I've ever had in fish keeping, and then I tagged a couple of my favorite YouTubers to also do the video. I just got a message from Seahorse Whisperer saying that she was going to do it. This video is similar. This is the My First Aquarium tag, and in this video I want to talk about the very first fish tank that you remember owning. So in my case, if you are new to my channel, there were a couple fish tanks that we had before I can really remember, so I'm going to base most of my answers off of the very first fish tank that I remember really owning and what that was like. And I think that this is going to be a really fun video because one, it'll show you how old I am, but two, it's also a great way for us to kind of get to know each other as a community and to realize just how much we've learned and how far we have come. So I have a list of questions. I will list them down below along with a list of the people that I'm going to be tagging, but just know if you want to do this video, I tag you. You're free to do it. So this is the My First Aquarium tag. What size was your first tank? So I was 3 when I got my very first tank, and it was a goldfish bowl. I don't remember anything about it other than that the fish died immediately. I am told that after that we had a 10-gallon community tank that had a pleco and a dwarf gourami in it, but I don't remember that tank either. So the first tank that I actually remember owning was a 29-gallon freshwater community tank in my second house, the house where my parents live right now. So it was 29 gallons. When did you get it? So I must have been at least 5 because we were in our second house. So that would have been at least 1994. I was born in 88, late 88, so it would have been 1993, 1994. But it might have even been later than that we got it. I just know that I was at least 5 because we were in our second house when we got it. What kind of fish did it have? So it was mostly a tropical community fish tank. I think that's what most people probably start out with. We didn't know what we were doing though, so occasionally we would have goldfish in there. Sometimes we would have a betta in there. We had other tanks too, like I had my own personal tanks as I got older. I had like a divided betta tank, and then I had, I think it was like a 1-gallon guppy tank when I was little. But the 29 is the one that I really remember. We had a pond too, actually, with goldfish. The 29 is the one that I really remember, and we mostly just kept freshwater community fish. And when I think of that tank, I think of black skirt tetras. We didn't understand what schools were, so we did kind of the Noah's Ark of fish tanks, or collectoritis, or whatever you want to call it, where we would do kind of 2 of each kind. So what always inevitably happened is we would have like tiger barbs and skirt tetras, and they would get really nippy because our schools were never big enough. So every once in a while we'd put an angelfish in there because my dad always wanted an angelfish. and they always got nipped to pieces by tiger barbs or skirt tetras. We often would have a pleco in there too. I'm sure it was a common pleco, and they always just starved because I don't think we knew to feed them. And then sometimes we had guppies in there, sometimes we might have had swordtails, I don't really remember. But when I think of that tank, I think of black skirt tetras. Those are the fish that come to mind. Whatever was labeled as easy and peaceful, my mom would pick, although the skirt tetras were not peaceful when they weren't in a big enough school. Same with the tiger barbs. How was it decorated? Okay, so I was a little 5-year-old kid, and if you haven't seen the video of my daughter's first fish tank yet, she recently decorated her very first tank in her bedroom, and I did kind of the same thing when I was a kid. So the tank was for my mom, it was my mom's, but she wanted us to participate, and my sister could care less, and so my sister wasn't really all that into it. So I picked out horrible green gravel, which showed all the muck and algae as it got older. It was really ugly. Green gravel. We had a little sign that said mermaid wanted, and then we never had live plants in that tank because my mom was scared of live plants. Even though they would have helped us out a lot, we never did. And so we had plastic plants in the tank, and they were like neon colored plastic plants. And those were the decorations that I remember. I'm sure there were other stuff in there, but those are the ones that I picked out that was in the tank. It definitely looked kind of like a Finding Nemo doctor's office kind of decoration setup, you know? Where did you buy the tank and the fish? So the tank we bought, I'm pretty sure at PetSmart. I think it was actually a Top Fin Kit brand tank. It was that like gray one that came with the hood, and we still, well, that's another question that's coming up. We still have it. I don't think they make the ones with the gray anymore. So it was a Top Fin brand, which makes me think it came from PetSmart. And then all of our fish, this was back in the 90s, there were local fish stores around, but we didn't know about them. So we bought all of our fish at PetSmart. There was one PetSmart that we went to quite a lot, and occasionally maybe Petco, but mostly it was PetSmart. We might have even bought some of them at Walmart. But yeah, PetSmart is mostly where we got the fish from. What kind of filter did it have? So I put this question specifically on there so I could talk about my under gravel filter. I was a kid in the 90s, and back then that's what we had. We had under gravel filters, which is a filtration system. Anything that grows bacteria will filter. And so basically what it did is it forced air down into the bottom underneath your substrate, and you had to have a lot of substrate in order to help grow bacteria. And that's all that we had. And I remember when they came out with hang-on back filters, we added a hang-on back filter to it as well, but the under gravel had like these tubes that came out from under it where the air would pump in. So that was our under gravel filter that we had, and we don't still have that. And then we eventually got a hang-on back. Did it have a heater? Yes, occasionally it did have a heater, but I live in Arizona, and honestly the heater malfunctioned way more often than it was worth. Most of the time houses, well, I can't speak for everyone how they run their air conditioning, but our house is so hot. And so the only tank that I run a heater in here is my 55-gallon discus tank, because it has to be 84 degrees. But the tank stays at 78 to 80 even in the dead of winter without a heater. So we did have heaters. A lot of times they would malfunction and kill the fish though. So not always a fan of heaters. What kind of lights and food and other equipment did it have? So it was the 90s. I'm going to say that a lot. We didn't even have T8 bulbs. I think it was a T12. It came with the kit. I don't think we ever replaced that bulb either. It was just like whatever came with it, and it lasted a while. Of course, we weren't growing plants or anything, so, you know, I don't think the par stayed up, but it had T12, and then we did sometimes have a heater. We weren't running any like CO2 or fertilizer or special substrate or anything like that because we didn't have plants. So the only gear that we really had is we had the under gravel filter, and then there's flies in here, and then we had hang-on back filters once they came available, and that was it that we were running on the tank. And as far as food, we were just feeding flakes. I don't ever remember feeding pellets, except occasionally we would feed betta pellets when there was a betta in there, but we would just feed Tropical Community flakes. It was probably Tetra brand, but just whatever was cheapest, maybe Wardley, I don't know, just whatever we could get a hold of. And I don't remember, I don't think we ever fed the plecos. Say hello to my dogo. Dogo? I always see that typed, I never know how to pronounce it. This is Apollo, by the way, guys. What is one thing that you would go back and tell yourself? I think this answer is going to be the same answer that everyone else is going to say, and that is how the nitrogen cycle worked. We definitely tested our water. We took our water in all the time. We were trying our best, but the people that worked there were not helpful. And so, yeah, just knowing what it meant when we had high ammonia would have been helpful information to have, and knowing not to leave dead fish in there because that'll create an ammonia spike, and not to change the filter the same day that you do a big water change. Those kinds of things were things that we wouldn't think about because we didn't understand how the nitrogen cycle worked. So, if you don't know how the nitrogen cycle works, I have a video called Stop Killing Your Fish, should be linked down below or in the iCards. Watch that. I think it's Fish Keeping 101. If you don't know that, you're going to really struggle. And once you do know that, it's a really powerful tool to know. So I wish I could go back and tell myself that. Do you still have the tank? I do. It was my mom's tank, and then it became my first saltwater tank, and then it went to her, and it was her saltwater tank for a while, and it's actually going to be the sump on my 125-gallon saltwater build that I'm kind of halfway through right now. So yeah, it's still holding up. I'm gonna recheck the silicone, but it seems to be doing pretty well. What inspired you to get the tank in the first place? Yes, so I love telling this story because when I think about fish, I think about my mom, and it's very much a family thing for me. It's funny because a lot of times people talk about how fish keeping is, there tends to be more men, and that's probably true in the hobby, but for me it was my mom, and then she passed it to me, and now I'm passing it along to my daughters, and it's just very much like our thing. And so my mom got the tank for us, but it was really for her. It was something that she really wanted, and so she wanted it, she'd been wanting it, and she's the one that decided, yes, we're going to do it, yes, we're going to get a proper setup with like a 29-gallon and actually try to do this with, you know, some more options here, which I think is really, really good. So yeah, it wasn't me necessarily that inspired us to get it. It was definitely for my mom, and she'd be the first to tell you that too. What resources do you wish that you had? So apart from the nitrogen cycle, which I do have a video about, there's a couple things that I think nowadays we have that I wish I had. So back in the 90s, all I had was one book from the library. I checked it out a million times, and then the fish store employees, and since we didn't know that local fish stores existed, it was PetSmart employees, and so they had like the little packets, and it was just not helpful. It was a start, but just not quite what all you needed. So nowadays the internet can be really helpful, but I think the internet can also be kind of harmful. I think that it can really scare people away from the hobby. We're totally being photobombed right now. I think it can really scare people away from the hobby. So I think that the Aqua Advisor website is a good starting point if you're looking for just a general idea of how many fish can I keep in this tank? Are these fish compatible? It's very conservative, but when you're brand new, I think it is good to be really conservative with how much you can stock, and it gives you a really good idea of, will these fish get along, and will this fish outgrow my tank? So I think that Aqua Advisor is a good starting point that I wish that we had. And then the other thing that I wish we had, apart from just knowing what the nitrogen cycle was, is YouTube fish channels in general. And so depending on if you're wanting saltwater or freshwater, kind of would depend on who I would recommend. I think most people who are starting out are probably starting out with freshwater, and there's a lot of freshwater YouTubers. I hope that this channel is really helpful because sometimes it can be so far into the hobby that it can be really overwhelming to new people. So I think YouTube is a good general place to start, especially for freshwater, but if you start to get overwhelmed, I think, yeah, Aqua Advisor. And then for saltwater, I think actually Live Aquaria is a helpful place to kind of start and get a general idea of how many fish can fit, or what size fish rather can fit in what size tank. Again, it's more conservative than I tend to be, but I think it's better to be more conservative, at least when you're first starting out, with what fish you end up keeping where. And then the last question is, who do you tag to do this video? So here's my problem. I watch a lot of fish YouTube channels, and I always forget. I always forget. I can't think of them all. But there's a few that are in my head that I would like to tag. I want to tag Seahorse Whisperer. I'm just going to tag her every time I do a tag video because she's my friend and I love her and more people should check her out. But I'll tag a couple other people. I'll tag the Water Box because he recently mentioned me in a shout out. I'll tag Inappropriate Reefer. We want to hear about your first fish tank. Aquarium Co-op. And since I'm wearing her shirt, I'll tag Solid Gold. We want to hear about your first tank. And I actually know the story, but I want to hear Rachel O'Leary tell the story about her Mother's Day first tank. I think her Mother's Day gift was her first tank. So I'd like to tag all of those folks, and then if there's anyone I forgot, just do the video. Danny's Aquariums, that's a smaller channel that hasn't done it yet. And you know who I didn't list last time is Steenfa Aquatics and Michael's Fish Room. I'd like both of you guys to do this tag too. So I'll link their channels down below, and if I didn't think of you, you can do the tag anyways, it's fine. And let us know in the comments what your first fish tank was like. I'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye!